The House Oversight Committee chamber was unusually packed. Media cameras buzzed in the back, and even seasoned political reporters had taken their seats early, sensing that something, or someone, was about to make headlines. On the docket, a hearing on national security, disinformation, and the role of media influence. But the real reason for the crowd, Fox News host and former Army officer Pete Hegseth was testifying. And sitting directly across from him was Representative Jasmine Crockett, known for her razor-sharp questioning and unshakable composure. From the moment Hegseth entered the room, he exuded confidence. Dressed in a sharp suit, he smiled for the cameras, exchanged handshakes with Republican lawmakers, and took his seat at the witness table like he was settling in for a television segment. He was used to control, used to being the one asking the questions, not answering them. Hegseth's opening statement was textbook partisan theater. With dramatic inflection, he warned that leftist media operatives were threatening national cohesion and undermining American values. He cited statistics, selectively. He invoked patriotic language, repeatedly. And he made it abundantly clear that his real target wasn't misinformation, but Democratic lawmakers who, in his words, cozy up to media lies that shield progressive failure. Many Republicans on the committee nodded in approval. The performance was fiery, bold, tailored for prime time. But Jasmine Crockett watched silently, her expression unreadable. She didn't interrupt. She didn't glance at her phone. She simply waited. When her name was called, Crockett leaned forward, microphone just inches from her mouth. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. Mr. Hegseth, she began, thank you for being here. You spoke passionately about integrity and media ethics. Let's start there. Before Hegseth could respond, she reached into her folder and pulled out a stack of printed documents, transcripts, tweets, screenshots of on-air quotes. One by one, she began laying out contradictions between what he had just said and what he had stated publicly in the past. On March 15, she read, "You claimed on your show that the Department of Homeland Security was spying on American citizens through COVID contact tracing. That statement was fact-checked and found to be entirely false by 3 independent agencies. Do you still stand by that claim?" Hegseth shifted in his seat. "Context matters, Congresswoman," she cut in, her tone still composed. "Great. Let's talk about context. Here's the full clip. Here's the transcript. And here's the fact check, which your network has yet to correct. Are you suggesting they got the context wrong too?" A murmur rippled through the chamber. Hegseth tried to pivot, but Crockett wasn't letting up. She moved to his stance on military affairs, showing discrepancies between his support for certain defense measures on air and his lack of advocacy for veterans' rights in real-world policy forums. She then shifted to his repeated endorsements of unverified election claims. "You said on air that the 2020 election was rife with fraud. Can you cite one federal case that substantiates that claim?" He opened his mouth, but there was silence. "I'll wait," she said bluntly, her gaze locked onto him. Someone in the gallery coughed. The tension in the room became almost physical, pressing down like humidity. Hegseth glanced toward committee members for support. None came. Realizing the momentum had shifted, he leaned forward, voice slightly raised. "You're twisting my words. I speak on television, not in legal briefs. I'm giving commentary." Crockett smiled faintly. "Ah, commentary. So when it's convenient, you're just a commentator, not a source of factual insight. Yet you're here testifying before Congress on the integrity of information." The silence that followed was heavier than anything Hegseth had anticipated. His signature bravado began to crack, subtly at first. A slight flush on his cheeks. A hand gripping the edge of the desk. Crockett had backed him into a corner, not with shouting or theatrics, but with irrefutable evidence and surgical precision. As her time expired, she closed her folder with a soft thud and leaned back in her chair. No further questions, for now, she said, eyes never leaving his. The chairperson thanked her, but the applause came from the crowd's energy, not their hands. Everyone could feel it. Pete Hegseth had entered that room expecting to dominate the conversation. Instead, he'd been methodically dismantled by a congresswoman who came not for headlines, but for accountability. Pete Hegseth was no stranger to confrontation. His career had been built on fiery rhetoric, combative interviews, and unwavering partisan loyalty. But as he stepped out of the House Oversight Committee chamber and into the bright glare of waiting cameras, his usual swagger was gone. He walked briskly, his lips pressed into a tight line, eyes avoiding the reporters who swarmed him. One journalist called out, "Mr. Hegseth, how do you respond to Congresswoman Crockett's claims about your past statements?" He stopped, hesitated, then spun around. This entire hearing was a setup, he snapped, voice sharp with frustration. They don't want real answers, they want soundbites. That wasn't questioning, that was a smear job. The clip aired on cable news within the hour. Unfortunately for Hegseth, it only drew more attention to the confrontation he'd hoped to diffuse. Multiple networks replayed the full exchange between him and Representative Jasmine Crockett, and it quickly became the viral moment of the day. Analysts from across the political spectrum chimed in. Some praised Crockett's meticulous preparation, others critiqued Hegseth's lack of detailed rebuttals, but no one denied the power dynamic had shifted entirely in her favor. Back in her office, Crockett was calm, composed, but not surprised by the storm brewing outside. Her staff showed her the trending hashtags. Hashtag CrockettCrushEdit, hashtag FactsOverFox, and hashtag McDripMoment were all over X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. News outlets began requesting interviews. Within a few hours, clips of her interrogation of Hegseth had amassed millions of views. Edits with dramatic music, commentary from Gen Z political creators, and even side-by-side reaction videos were spreading like wildfire. Crockett took it all in stride. "It's not about me," she told her chief of staff. "It's about truth. People are tired of these so-called experts being given platforms with no accountability." He walked in expecting a commercial. He got a cross-examination. Later that evening, Pete Hegseth appeared on Fox News, trying to reclaim the narrative. Sitting under studio lights with a tight smile, he began with, "What happened today wasn't a fair hearing, it was a political hit job." He called Crockett a leftist attack dog, accusing her of playing to social media rather than engaging in meaningful dialogue. But the damage was done. As fact-checkers began dissecting his rebuttal, it became clear that Crockett's points had been thoroughly documented and sourced. Nonpartisan watchdog groups confirmed her citations, showing that Hegseth's previous on-air claims had been widely debunked long before the hearing. The longer he spoke, the more defensive he sounded. Meanwhile, Crockett's public image was soaring. She was praised not just for her sharp questioning, but for her calm demeanor under pressure. Commentators on both CNN and MSNBC noted that she had treated the hearing like a courtroom, methodical, precise, and rooted in facts. Even a few center-right voices acknowledged that Hegseth had been caught flat-footed, entering a serious hearing with nothing more than soundbites and slogans. Overnight, the story shifted. Articles bore headlines like, Crockett takes down Fox's Hegseth in must-see hearing, and Truth vs. Talk. How one Congresswoman outclassed a media giant. Memes and clips circulated among younger audiences, turning Crockett into a symbol of political accountability. Even late-night hosts like Stephen Colbert and Seth Meyers couldn't resist chiming in, joking about Hegseth bringing Fox News takes to a fact-check fight. Inside conservative circles, reactions were split. Some rallied to Hegseth's defense, arguing he'd been ambushed. But others, privately, admitted he had underestimated his opponent. A Republican staffer told Politico anonymously, he thought this was going to be a TV segment. He forgot that in hearings, you don't control the camera, or the questions. The ripple effects continued into the next day. Congressional leadership began discussing future guidelines for media figures testifying in oversight roles. Crockett, meanwhile, continued business as usual. When asked by a reporter whether she felt she had destroyed Hegseth, she simply replied, "I didn't destroy anyone. I just held someone accountable for their own words. If that's destruction, maybe the problem isn't me." In the end, what started as a tense exchange evolved into a cultural moment, one that put facts over flash, evidence over ego. Pete Hegseth had walked into that hearing expecting to dominate with rhetoric. Instead, he found himself at the center of a takedown that didn't rely on volume, but on truth. And Jasmine Crockett, she walked out of that chamber not just with the respect of her colleagues, but with the eyes, and admiration, of a nation that saw her do what too few in politics dare to: speak truth, stay cool, and let the facts do the talking.